Beloved Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Okay, let me give you my thoughts on this, pretty poor performance, I thought, last night against Real Sociedad. Let's be honest, I think the only good news coming out of this are the 3 points, the victory, but I think in terms of play, there's still so much to fix, and I'm not seeing a lot of forward progress. A 0-2 victory with a couple of penalties that we'll discuss. One, I think, fairly obvious. The other one, I'm not so sure. But in any case, this was, I think, a subpar performance, and there are some kind of issues that concern me. But let's talk about the match in general. I know that we're missing a few key players, and I have to keep that in mind. But let me give you my honest thoughts about the match, and we can discuss individual players as well. All right, thanks for joining me. Let's get started. Madridistas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the match last night. Look, the sort of match started the way you would expect. Real Sociedad sort of very aggressive, pressing very aggressively, pushing forward. It took us quite a bit of time to sort of settle things down. We were having a very hard time getting the ball out of the back. I think Ancelotti told the center backs to try to play a lot of long diagonal balls, and it really wasn't working in the first half. The accuracy of those passes just wasn't there. Militao had a couple of, stray balls that were sort of very disruptive to the transition play. The team, I think in general, just looked very disjointed to me. There seemed to be a very, very poor connection between the lines. We were just not able to find the connectivity between the midfield and the forwards. Look, the defending as well, I think, was just very, very, very poor. Especially that first line of pressing was just completely ineffective. I didn't think that we pressed or defended well either up front or further back. And then, of course, we had a lack of link-up play, and neither Arda nor Luka nor Fede were really able to link up with the strikers particularly well. And then I thought that the decision making up front was also just very sloppy. And Vini in particular, I think there were a couple of situations where, we could have created some danger, but it was just the wrong decision, the wrong pass. Look, Real Sociedad hit the post 3 times. We have to admit we were very, very fortunate. Real Sociedad certainly deserved to score 1 or 2 in that first half. Look, we've played 3 matches away from home now. And I think in none of the 3 matches can we say that we were the better side. And what concerns me is that I'm not really seeing progress. And, I know that we're missing key players, and, Tchouaméni is very important. Camavinga's, a very high energy player, very helpful. And of course, Jude is absolutely essential. But I'm just very, very concerned that we're just not, the lines are quite separate. There's too much distance between the lines. The ball has to travel too long to get from one player to another. We're not playing compact football. And it really worries me that I'm just not seeing the kind of progress that we need to see. Now, I know it's early in the season, and I can only hope things improve, but we have to admit this was a pretty poor performance. I think we were very, very lucky to get away with what we got away with. The goals came from 2 penalties, one which I thought was very, very clear. The other one was dubious. I mean, the second one, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have called if I were reffing the match. But neither of those penalties were plays of particular danger. I mean, they were just sort of random penalties, but I don't think that they were really warranted in terms of us creating a lot of chances, whereas Real Sociedad was having a very, very easy time getting the ball up front and creating danger. Look, I do have to mention the penalties because obviously here everyone's, the whole anti-Madridista machinery is going crazy. I think that we're just so unaccustomed to getting these calls. I have to be honest with you. I was shocked that either of those penalties were called because, in the last 15 years in this country, we just don't get those calls. So we're so unaccustomed to it that, of course, the anti-Madridistas, they go crazy when this happens because it just never does. Whereas Barça, kind of gets these every week. I can tell you one thing for all the sort of, crazy anti-Madridistas out there. Each of these penalties was much, much clearer than the penalty given to Rafinha against Valencia, where he wasn't touched and just falls to the ground. So Look, one of the penalties I would have given, I think, the other one I probably wouldn't have. The ball had already left Vini. I didn't think that the challenge was particularly violent. But listen, sometimes, very rarely the coin sort of flips in our favor. But look, the takeaways, I'm concerned about kind of the cohesiveness, the way we're moving the ball. Our transition play is very poor. There was nobody yesterday that was able to glue the lines together. A couple of other small observations I would make. I mean, if we go kind of player by player, look, I think Courtois had a reasonable match, a couple of good saves, nothing really noteworthy. Carvajal defended very, very well, as always, very aggressive, but didn't really participate much in attack. I mean, I didn't really see him up front a lot at all. The same can be said for Mendy. I think he, defended aggressively. He did save us on a couple of very key moments. I think he was crucial. Militao, I think Militao started poorly, but got better as the game went on. Like I say, his distribution play in the first half I thought was sloppy, but he did come into the game a little bit more in the second half. Rudiger, solid, but he did lose a couple of balls that I thought were kind of uncharacteristic of him. And again, it's just this feeling of kind of just something disjointed, something isn't quite gelling. Luka Modric played 90 minutes, which I think is extraordinary for a 39-year-old player. And I think that he played well, but wasn't necessarily covering as much ground as I think maybe he would have many years ago, and again, not really providing the glue between the lines and connecting with the forwards in the way that we would like. Arda, I would say the same thing. I think he worked very, very hard, but he just wasn't effective in connecting with the forwards. Another thing I'd mention about Arda is I don't really understand why Modric is taking the corners. I think one of the specialties that Arda Güler has is that in set plays, probably in the world, he's one of the best in terms of putting the ball in exactly the spot you want in set pieces. So I'm a little bit surprised that Arda hasn't taken over that role. I think this is something Ancelotti needs to consider. Fede, Fede worked tirelessly, but was just less effective than in other matches. Pushing forward, his presence was, kind of wasn't there the way that we see in other matches. So something was kind of missing. Vini, I mean, I have to say this, I've defended him a lot in terms of the bad press and all this stuff, but Vini, he needs to stop with these unnecessary distractions with the crowd, and every time there's a challenge or a tackle with the other player, he just needs to concentrate on playing football. I think that these distractions are completely unnecessary. Now, of course, none of this warrants the kind of character assassination he's suffering, and I've defended him for that, but I think we have to be honest that we need him to focus more on the play and less on these ridiculous little rivalries and confrontations on the pitch. I mean, he needs to forget about the crowd, forget about, the personal challenges, and just kind of focus on football, because he felt distracted to me. His decision-making, I think, was a bit poor. He just felt a bit scatterbrained. Now, of course, he's very talented, but I just felt that his mind, his level of concentration wasn't where it needed to be. Mbappe, in my mind, was the best player on the pitch. I mean, he showed some incredible signs of this unbelievable combination of technique and power and speed. I mean, this is an incredible player. Now, the problem is that he was receiving the ball too deep. And I mean, it's a little bit too much to ask that Mbappe pick up the ball in his own half and carry it 60 meters and dribble through three players and score. He tried his best, worked very, very hard. And another thing I'll say that I really appreciate about Kylian, that which is the opposite of Vini, is that, Kylian doesn't get embroiled in this kind of distractions and nonsense. I mean, he was fouled on a couple of occasions, but he just kind of got up and went on with it and played. He sort of smiled sarcastically, but just played. And I think that I love that attitude. I think it's a very focused attitude and very serious and professional. And I think Vini, I hope it rubs off on Vini, because, Vini needs to focus a little bit more. But look, I love Kylian's attitude. I love his technical and physical attributes. And he gave us some glimpses of the unbelievable skill this player has. Brahim was taken off. I think he wasn't as effective as some of his interventions, and you just get the feeling with Brahim and sometimes with Rodrigo that these players are better off the bench. They seem to make a bigger impact off the bench than when they start. So Brahim, for some reason, just wasn't quite as effective as in other occasions. I didn't really see him creating too much danger up front. He suffered a muscle injury. It looked like a hamstring. I hope not, because those take a long time to heal. We'll get more information on Brahim's injury in the next day or two. And then Rodrigo came in, and Rodrigo was just lost. I mean, he was just absolutely lost. He was far too isolated when he got the ball. He tried too hard to dribble between too many players, lost the ball at the wrong times. It's just the decision making and the connectivity between the players is just not there. And then, of course, Enric came on with too little time left. I do think that he's a player that can change things. But again, Ancelotti insists on bringing him in with 3 minutes left. And I just don't really see what the point of that is. I think bring him in with either 10 or 15 minutes left, or don't bring him in at all, because I don't see how you expect him to make a difference in so little time. But look, overall, this was I think a poor performance. I'm concerned that we're not quite correcting these big issues, match after match, and we're getting away with points because we have individual skill and that shows up from time to time and saves the match. But I'm just not seeing the kind of cohesive play and transition play that we really need to see. And Real Sociedad's transition play was just so instant and quick, and we just seemed so soft against that. It's just too many things were missing. So I think, look, it was a very poor performance. We'll take the 3 points. The penalties, I think, let's celebrate. These things very rarely happen to us, so let's celebrate it. But I am concerned that we're just not correcting some of these big issues. But listen, those are my thoughts on the match. The next match coming up is the first match of the Champions League against Stuttgart. So I'll give you my thoughts about that match afterwards as well. But thanks for joining me as always. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And as always, Ala Madrid.